Hey y'all. So we are going to move on this week in Proverbs chapter 31. Today we are starting in verse 23. So I'm going to read it from the Amplified Version, and then we're going to look at a couple of referential scriptures that shed a little bit more light on this. So it says, her husband is known in the city's gates when he sits among the elders of the land. That's from the Amplified. Now, her husband is known in the city's gates. One version says he's well known, and the Message says that he's well respected at the city's gates. Now, what's special about the city's gates, and why does it talk about her husband sitting at the city gates? Well, in this particular time in Israel, and we read about this in the book of Judges with Deborah, who was a prophetess, but she was also a judge. And we read about this, let's see, in Ruth. There's an account which gives a little example of how this works. But the city's gates were where rulers sit in judgment. At this particular time, it was their courtroom. So it was what would have been the equivalent to our courtroom in Israel. And so for this virtuous woman's husband to sit with the elders is that he was part of that group. He was well respected. He was well known. And these are the other verses that I want to kind of put in with this. One of them we've already read, and that was much early on, but it's Proverbs 12:4, and it says, a virtuous and worthy wife, earnest and strong in character, is a crowning joy to her husband. And actually, that's not the whole verse. I didn't write the rest of it because I didn't think we'd go there. But it says, but she who makes him ashamed is as rottenness in his bones. And so, of course, this Proverbs 31 woman, this virtuous woman, is a crowning joy to her husband. And Proverbs 31:31, so we're skipping ahead, says, give her the fruit of her hands and let her own works praise her in the gates of the city. And of course, that lends to what is known about her and what it says about her husband. We also read that he who finds a wife finds a good thing. And there was one more that we read, but that what the wife does and who we are, the integrity and the character that we have and that we live out, are crowning joy to our husbands. Well, you go back to the beginning of Proverbs 31, that her husband, the heart of her husband trusts in her confidently and relies on and believes in her securely, so that he has no lack of honest gain or need of dishonest spoil. She comforts, encourages, and does him only good as long as there is life within her. And so that leads to his character and his integrity and the way in which he, I don't want to say runs the home or rules the home, but the man is the spiritual head of the household. And so the way in which his wife shines and the way in which we as women respond and act does show on our husbands, whether or not we like to admit it. And so give her the fruit of her hands and let her own works praise her in the city streets and in the city's gates. And her husband is known in the city gates. And the elders, of course, again, for him to sit in this place and for him to fellowship with the elders is prestigious and quite an honor. And this lends to what the wife does at home and how she conducts herself and how she handles the household. And Lord knows we could all use more grace where that is concerned. Especially me, but especially all of us. We're getting ready to add that fourth little boy, and you never know how things are going to be until they actually happen. And so we trust the Lord that He knew what He was doing, giving us our Nathan. But I want whatever I do and how I conduct myself to be a crowning joy for my husband. I don't ever want him to be embarrassed at what I do. And so let's look at that in the spiritual sense as well, where Proverbs 31 is a picture of the bride of Christ, the virtuous church, the glorious church, in that we conduct ourselves in a manner worthy of the one we call Lord. And God is the righteous judge, the one who sits on the throne of judgment. And so we don't do anything to discredit His name. We don't do anything to bring tarnish His reputation or His goodness. And in the same way that we are so careful, or that we should be so careful in the way in which we act concerning God our Father, and Jesus our bridegroom, we in the same way have the same kind of respect and the same kind of attitude concerning our husbands. And we'll pick up here tomorrow. I'll see you then. Bye, y'all.